him why he do this, why he do that, how you do this, how you do that. Hell yeah, I'm trying to do what I want, and I get good grades. That's why I wear these hats with A's. These people recognize that's why they stay up in my face. Cause
people always ask me all these damn questions. People always ask all these damn questions.
They wanna know my play.
Hey y'all, how's it going? Welcome to another episode of the Lighthouse series, season 4, episode 7, titled Nepotism. We're gonna go What's in Your Wallet Part 2. So this is a special show for me, I would say, not only because I have an old friend here to talk about some very sensitive topics, but I recently lost a friend. His name is Brad. He was shot in the head in Virginia because of something he might have said. So I'm dedicating this episode to him, and I want to dedicate my disclaimer to him probably for the rest of the time I do this. So just making sure we're not being misunderstood. We're here. We're talking. It's like being in a barber shop or being in some sort of shop where people are just talking and we're trying to understand each other because we have to work together. And so let this disclaimer.
Absolutely.
Let this disclaimer be that we're just trying to iron things out as friends, as human beings, as partners, as lovers of life. So RIP to Brad. I would actually like to take a moment of silence for him. We ain't gonna do it long, but RIP. Yeah, so Brad was on an episode called What's Your Wallet? And we were talking about racism, the race card, and being able to pull it. We were talking about having a black card, having a white card.
Yep.
And I think that's fitting for the conversation today as far as having certain cards. And we're talking about nepotism. And so the definition sits out there as understanding that you are a person who can put your family in a position of success based on your position. Now, the reason I'm connecting this to what's in your wallet and talking about the race card is because the perception of nepotism tends to fall in a certain area. But I'm also connecting this to BK. And so we're going to talk about a lot of different things, but the race card is something that I think we don't talk about because it doesn't always look racist. But I would tell you, there are things that come along with having access to resources. So we're all retired Air Force, go Air Force, right?
Go Air Force.
We're all retired airmen. And understanding that veteran card, especially being retired, like there's a hierarchy between being retired and just being a veteran.
There absolutely is. Yep.
And so we understand that being able to flash that card gives us more benefit in life because of the service, and we could yell that we deserve this, or we can sit back humbly, dare I say that word, and say, hey, yeah, I'm just here to get what I can. But we understand that life feels good when it has advantages. And so when we talk about nepotism, my sweet serenade today to nepotism, we were talking about LeBron James, and I have my good friend JJ John. I've known him since at least 2007, I would say. Probably before then, but 2007 is I think when we really started actually hanging out. Very fun guy. Don't even have the bio or the time to talk about, how unique I think you are. But we were having a conversation on Facebook about, nepotism and LeBron bringing Bronny in, and you felt however you felt about it. And I want you to be able to share it because I want to be able to open up dialogue about what your experience is with nepotism and what you think you would see with LeBron and his son and what that could expose the world to. But before we do that, I want to allow Dr. Ham, because this series is pretty much wrapped around him, but I want him to kind of lay down what nepotism is foundationally, so we can talk from there. Is that fine?
Yeah. So historically, I think you have to look at the word from a historical context, not a recency bias. Because how we view nepotism now is different between nepotism 200, 300 years ago, where nepotism was not just in society, it was a part of society. The king's son would rule because of nepotism. Your dad is the king, so you could now be the king because your dad. The public accepted this idea. But as we got to an egalitarian society, we said that benefits, primarily ruling of the state, should not be handed down off of birthright. It should be handed down from merit, meaning you should deserve or earn what you get. However, that idea of earning what you get and getting it from a family member has this idea of a bias in there, meaning that I only got it because my dad or because of a relative, a close relative, because nepotism isn't just any relative. It's usually a father, a mother, or a connection that can give you access to your point, resources that you would have not previously had access to. And so when you look at it historically, I think there's always a battle between this concept of how much nepotism is enough, because we're not going to get rid of nepotism, because I think it's a core element of our society. Because if I cannot pass down what I have received to my progeny, then what is the purpose of me trying to get more benefit? Why am I going to work harder if I can't give it to my children? What would be my incentive? So we're always juggling and wrestling with this idea of how much is enough. Is a death tax enough? So I think when we look at it, we have to have that historical lens. If not, we'll have a perception that all nepotism is bad, which I think can ultimately misconstrue the argument.
I would, as I pass this to you, JJ, I like what you said there, and I like the foundation that you build with that. And so understand that now we're talking about the king. You made a statement about king, and so we're going to talk about LeBron James, King James. But understanding that what you said, I believe that to be true. Like, you would be stepping on people's legacy or thought of legacy by saying that they can't create a life and pass down legacy to their offspring, their issue, their family. And so JJ,
inheritance.
Right, it's an inheritance. So with that,
right,
which is fine. JJ, what's your thoughts about nepotism?
Well, let's step back to teenagers. Okay, so let's take a look at the Bronny James. He's 19, 20 years old, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
All right, so take a wide swath of 19 to 20-year-olds. Okay, so let's talk black, white, Asian, doesn't matter, race, color, creed, doesn't matter. Take a full level playing field of all of those teenagers. Okay, now put them in the military, where they're not able to benefit from that proposed nepotism. Okay, they're not able to benefit from any type of inheritance, because now you've leveled that playing field. We all have to play by those same rules. And then go fast forward 20 years, like all of us did, right? And throw yourself back out into the civilian world, to where now you're exposed to it. Everyone's exposed to it. And so I think there's an inherent level of learning in education that must occur, simply because of lack of exposure, right? I didn't have any extra hands up. Kevin, I don't think you had any extra hands up when you were in the military. Bert, I know you probably didn't have any extra hands up either. We did our own thing, right? Yeah. We took care of ourselves, and we made our own way. So, for an old hat like myself that sees Bronny James at 19 years old, 20 years old, call up dad and say, I need a job. There's a level of perceived nepotism. The second part of that is, is it generational privilege or is there a race privilege in this? I'd say there's almost a generational privilege because, as we've all said, we want better for our kids, right? So we want to be able to pull that generation along. We don't want to struggle like our parents struggled, right? Our parents didn't want us to struggle like they struggled as they were coming up. So there's a real dividing factor, if you will, that says, okay, is this truly a privilege situation, or is this a right place, right time? Or is it a combination of the both? Or is this individual just really, really good at their job and they happen to land on the same team as their dad? I don't know.
So that's a good question, right? So when we're talking about this particular situation, we're talking about someone who is good enough to be in the NBA. And their dad, even if you say good enough, we say maybe he's not good enough. But we'll say, hey, he is good enough to be in the NBA because his dad is in the NBA, right?
Correct. So inherently, there comes along that level of assumed skill, right? We've seen it through. It doesn't matter the sport. We've seen it with all of them. We've seen it with the Dale Earnhardts of the world, and everybody thought Dale Earnhardt Jr. was going to be the second coming of Christ. All praise Dale. He never made it, right? Never made it.
Cool name though.
Cool name, man. Cool name. I bet you get all the best parking spots too. But no one really considers that aspect of it. Now, along with that, there is the aspirations to be as good as a LeBron James. I'm sure Bronny, he wants to be as good, if not better, than his dad.
Well, so if we talk about Dale Earnhardt and his son, did his dad blaze a trail for his son even to have the ability to attempt? We would have to lean that way.
You'd have to lean that way. You absolutely would.
But I think what's important to bring up is scale and scope. If I own the corner store and I hire my son to work there, that's nepotism also. Mm-hmm. Because he got that job. He got that job because I own that store. Right. So what we're talking about is the scale and the scope of the nepotism. How big can yours reach? Because some nepotism reaches to the empire. You can inherit the world, and that's different between inheriting the corner store.
So there is a point to that, though, that if it's your own business, you can get away with that, right? You can get away with that. Me as a general manager, vice president, I can't hire my son. It's against our rules to do it because of what's occurred in the past, right?
Did LeBron hire his son, or did the Lakers organization hire him?
And that's where I was going to go next with that. Yeah. So he was good enough, Kevin, to your point, he was good enough to be drafted. Yeah. It doesn't matter if there was an outside influence. Doesn't matter if it was a sidebar discussion, with the new coach. It doesn't matter.
We'll never know behind the scenes.
Are you saying Kevin or Calvin? Are you saying Kevin or Calvin? Okay.
Calvin.
Okay. I keep. Go ahead.
Because we'll never know behind the scenes,
right?
When it comes to that.
Well, it's fair. Both of those points are fair, right? But at the end of the day, the people who drafted LeBron not LeBron, LeBron's son, the Lakers. Who owns the Lakers? Jenny Buss. And she got that from Jerry Buss, if I'm not mistaken, which was her father.
Yeah,
which is nepotistic.
Right, all of it's there. So what?
It's the scale and scope.
Well, so we end up. So I don't want to misconstrue some things here because the tone of the conversation was struck because I made a post and then we started talking about it. I feel like the sense of nepotism and the despise of it exists in general, but when it was brought up in particular for LeBron James, it could seem prejudiced. It could seem racial if it's like, hey, I have a problem with LeBron James and doing that.
but I'll speak to that issue, that intersectionality between the racial aspect of this. Because historically in this country, Black people, predominantly Black men, have had nothing to give to their children on that scale and scope. So it becomes magnified. Like, for example, I don't think I'm the first doctor in my family. I think I'm the first one with the resources and the time to do it. It's a difference. I think that I'm not the first, I maybe have the first title, but I think that there have been many people in my family who could have done it had they went to the military, got the GI Bill. Because remember, when the GI Bill first came out, Black soldiers couldn't get it. So how many generations of Black doctors did we get that we miss who couldn't afford it because they couldn't get the GI Bill that paid for school? And so when you talk about the deficit in it, I think the issue becomes racial in the sense that it seems as if it can be cherry-picked issues of Black exceptionalism, because this will be a case of Black exceptionalism. This is not the norm. This is an exceptional individual who has a very exceptional lifestyle. He has an exceptional son, and now we can focus on it. But if this was, there are a lot of actors in Hollywood who, because they were famous, their children got roles that we don't talk about.
No, we don't.
We don't talk about.
Berg, you make a very good point with that. That's almost a taboo discussion, right?
Oh.
Hollywood's off limits.
Yes.
So that's a great point. That's something I had never really even considered.
Because there's a lot of, and I even there's actors now that are, and I would make the argument that they're probably better actors, some of them, than their parents, because they got trained by their parents at home. They went to the best acting schools, and they actually got to be in an environment where they could mirror the actor all the time.
Yeah, to groom them as they're coming up.
Absolutely. That's our word of the day. Huh?
It is. That's it.
You got it. And so to your point, yeah.
Well, guys, so let's back up just a little bit. I've got a question for you. We all came up in the military around the same time, right? Yep. And Berg, you made the comment about Black members of the military were not eligible for the GI Bill, right?
Yeah.
Initially, right? And that actually changed in the 50s or 60s.
Well, so it was on a state by state level because they implemented the program where you had to act. They didn't do it federally. So what would happen is some states were early adopters, as you know,
would recognize it, right?
Yeah, and in some states, like the South, pretty much was like, no, we're not going to recognize this.
That sounds like states' rights. That sounds like states' rights. Anything the federal government does not want to deal with, and it can deal with infringing on people's rights, they give it to the states.
Yeah, and that's how it happened. So you could say, I would say by the mid 70s, you pretty much had a blanket across the board.
Okay, so with that said, and then let's go forward another, I'd say probably about another 25 years. So in the 2000s, all of us, by the grace of the government at that time, then turned over to the 9/11 bill, right? Yep. So we were allowed that. So we have two very, very definitive generations.
Yes. That
benefited from change. Along with that change, we were able to, I mean, now we've got the GI Bill for life, right? Use it till however long you want, as long as you transfer it over within a certain amount of time frame. So
you only got 36 months now. Unless I'm finding something new here, I need to go back to BA right now.
Of total use, yes, of total use. But you could stretch that as long as you want.
Yeah,
right. So there's it's very it's a very unique situation when we talk about the actual true vision and perception of nepotism, because I really, really believe that some of us, I mean, I even say it too, I wish I had a parent that had the ability to make a phone call to United Airlines to say, hey, my kid needs a job. Will you hire him in at $45 an hour? And this will be great. Did LeBron, make a phone call or two? Who knows? Did it work? It damn did. It damn right did.
Well, that's what you look for. So confident opinion, moving into the confident opinion
Mm-hmm.
section, you want to be able to make boss moves like that.
You have to in life.
Well, so you made so one thing's for certain. If Bronny is not good and not good enough to be in the NBA, he will show that. And so he will eliminate himself. So I will leave that there. But him having opportunity is based on his father, which is, we're going to say, black exceptionalism, but it's still a form of black excellence in the fact that when good things happen to black people come together in this trauma bond to say, yeah, that's good for us, because
I would agree.
The consciousness of black people don't get a lot of wins. That's why there was a lot of conflict during the OJ trial, right? Because like, if he even got away with it, we're like, damn, you got one over the man, right?
But then you see this, and I would say the intersection of capitalism and nepotism create a monster.
Ooh,
because what's
touching on a hell of a subject there.
Well, because what you're going to see happen is when LeBron goes out there on the court with his son, it's going to do something for capital. It's going to draw capital there, because people are going to, the ticket prices are going to go up, because whether they win or lose, I don't think they're concerned. They're going to fill out the seats. And I think when it comes to putting the best show in the town, I think it goes to say, like, the passing, not of the throne or passing the torch, but I think it goes to say, hey, you know what? I need something to model my behavior off of so that I can see if it's good to work. If, for me, when I first saw somebody in dress blues with the shirt, with the hat on, I was like, I want to be that. I didn't know what their job was. I just liked how it looked, and I said I wanted to be that. Didn't know what it required, didn't know what it took, but I saw something I wanted to be. And I would say with LeBron and his son, I think that people are understanding that unless the law forbids it, to your point about you can't do it because it's illegal, unless the law forbids it, it's not going to be a problem for those on the scale and scope. I think the bigger problems you're going to see is, I don't know if it's envious. I saw somebody say, listen, man, you ain't talked to your son in a year and you mad LeBron got his son in the NBA. Come on, bro. Like, go talk to you ain't seen your kid in a year, but you're concerned about what this man doing with his family. And it's like,
there's some truth to that, though. There's some truth to that. There really is.
So,
it's a tough intersection. It really is.
If I may, well, so we're talking about intersectionality, but the intersectionality in a lot of different ways comes to a point where we say, hey, just because it happened this one time, when will you ever see, how often do you see, somebody with the ability to play with their son? Like, this is the first time this happened in the NBA, but we've seen it in MLB before, right? King Griffey Jr. King Griffey Jr. Sr. Like, I saw him steal a ball from his dad before. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what we don't see a lot of, and we barely see it, we're talking about it now. We don't see a lot of black ownership in sports. And so what we start having the true conversation about is what equality and equity looks like. And so when the playing field starting to look not even level, because like I said, the ability to be an NBA player and create one, that's something different.
But you run into this fallacy of fairness.
Yeah,
life isn't fair. And so when you're trying to compare the idea that we start from the same point is a lie. It's a fable. We don't start from the same point. We have advantages that we either talk about or don't talk about them, conscious or unconscious. Sometimes just having a parent in the home is an advantage. Just having both, if you have both of your parents at the house, it's an advantage.
Yes, it is.
So it's an advantage. but we don't talk about it measurably. We know that if you complete high school, we know that the majority of people in prison did not graduate high school. The majority of people in prison did not graduate high school. And it's like 70-80%. It's a high number. And you would ask yourself, why is it so high? Because if I don't complete high school, I'm going to create a cycle. But the question that I have with nepotism is, I think we say nepotism and we call it something that I think we're sometimes mislabeling it. It was Rockefeller who said competition is sin. He said, I don't want to compete. The goal of capitalism is to form monopoly. And when you consolidate power, it makes you paranoid. It does, because it makes you paranoid. And the only people you trust are those closest to you, usually your family. That's why if you go to Europe, the Bourbons, they would marry each other and they would create deformities in their children, but they didn't realize they didn't want to intermingle their blood with people they didn't think were royal, but not realizing it was actually destroying their bloodline by intermarrying. But power makes you paranoid. And as you get more power, you have to protect it more closely. And you have to be able to talk to people like your children to tell them the trade secrets. Like, you don't know the recipe to Coca-Cola, but the heirs of the Coca-Cola fortune do. And only 2 people know it in the world, and they don't talk to each other. They don't know each other. Did you know that? How they keep the secret to Coca? They separate it. But the reason that I bring that up is because nepotism allows you to trust people and give things to people who you think will do things with it that are wise, because you've given them tutelage and knowledge and instruction and say, hey, look, Ronnie, don't go out there and get that first girl pregnant like some of these players be doing, because you're going to be getting coached. Because LeBron is the coach, too, of the team. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, no, for sure.
JJ Redick is the coach on paper, but LeBron is the coach of the Lakers. So
yeah, JJ is the face of the management staff right now. That's about it. So.
Yeah. We know who coaching that team.
Go ahead, JJ. What you got? Let me go ahead.
No, I mean it's a very valid point. It's one that I agree, Burke. And nepotism can be seriously misconstrued. On a family level, a societal level, in outward and even an industrial level, to where there's an unforeseen advantage that's given just because you got a good dad or a mom that owns a company or is close to an organization that wants to draft your son. Calvin brought up a great point. We'll know if he's any good or not. We will know if he's any good or not. Give it this season, and if he's not good, one of 2 things is going to happen. The organization's going to burn down for it, or everyone's going to ride off of the sunset, and there'll be a lot of I told you so's. That'll be about the extent of it. A great point, though, is the capitalistic aspect of this. I agree, guys. They've made their money already. It's done. It's done. It was probably, when I look back at it, it was probably one of the best moves the Lakers could have made for Showtime. It really is. No doubt.
Well, we can't ever forget that the NBA and all these sports teams are entertainment.
It's entertainment.
And it's the gladiators.
Does Doc Rivers' son get into the NBA and Doc ain't in the NBA? I don't know. Austin is okay, but he needed that extra little push.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, this is what life is.
But the idea,
very true.
But the idea of seizing the advantage is necessary as long as you're seizing the advantage. Like, I understand nepotism in public policy. I understand nepotism in government, because this nepotism affects your life. But we're talking about a sport that is for entertainment purposes. So ultimately, the worst that can happen is, like, to your point, he crashes and burns, we find out, or he becomes I don't know who's his game models right now, because I don't know where he would fit in the NBA. He's really undersized right now. I feel like he needs some size. I don't know, but if he puts size on, is he gonna lose his quickness? I don't know that. Maybe
how tall is he?
Isn't he like
the same height as like Steph Curry?
He's like 6'4", I think.
Yeah, I thought he was 6'3", 6'4".
And so all he has to do is just learn how to be a 1 or a 2, and he'll be all right.
I'm saying, like who's he model his game off of?
He's got so much time to figure that out. But here's what I don't want to miss, though. Like, that's entertainment, but we're talking about policy. But
Yeah.
you know, where John works, he's saying that he, you know, can't necessarily participate in nepotism. But I think, you know, when you own things, you don't have to play by the rules.
You're right. You're
Right.
exactly right. You're exactly right.
And when you are in high places, because I would say government schmotherment, and I say that to say, like, I've known people who are generals and their kids got certain jobs because they weren't getting certain AFSCs.
Yep, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've literally gotten stuff done in the office through CE. You know how backed up those workloads are. Hey, there was a transaction like, oh, your daughter wants to learn how to be a paralegal. Sure, send her by. Hey, do me a favor though. Can you push this work order to the top?
Yeah, but
Thank you. Wow, that's done. Never had something done so fast because of nepotism.
Yeah, but then we see what happens when it starts to get into places, when we start to identify like the impact of it. Like, because I mean, honestly, there are certain jobs that are tokenism jobs. These are like these are show jobs. You ain't making no important decisions. Like, yeah, you the commissioner of some department that does something small. Like you're not really affecting lives. And that's why I say scale and scope is so important to me, because I think of it and I say historically, not that you don't have anything to give, I think is the issue, because some of the challenges is that we're losing, I think sight of, if we removed it, what does it leave us with? Like, what do we put in its place? I just think you're going to create a different phenomenon. You're going to get the same result a different way. Because now what I have to do is I have to create ways around any barrier you put at me. You put up a wall, and that's how our system works. You put up a barrier, smart people figure a way around it, they erect a new barrier, smart people find a way around. It's like a chess game.
Story of my life.
Yeah. And so what you're finding out is that I need to see 3 barriers down the road. See, because I'm not constructing a barrier for your current argument. I'm constructing a barrier for your next 3 arguments before you even made them. So when you're making your argument, I've already constructed, because I'm not trying to build nothing besides you. I'm trying to go under it. I want to go under it, because if I go under it to its foundation, I can see what it's built off of. And I think nepotism, for all that we have said about it, I think that it has become a tool that has a utility. There's a utility of it, because if I can't, like I said, if I can't give my stuff to my children, who will take it? Who will get it?
Well, this is legacy. This is legacy.
And when you talk about legacy, but now we're talking about, like, if your last name is Rockefeller, if your last name is Vanderbilt, if your last name is all the Astor, you're good. But because they built trust, they have nepotism, but it's a different form of nepotism, because they can be shadowy. Because when you the more capital you get, the less visible you have to be. Right.
Because you can pay people to do all your dirty work
to make things happen. Agreed.
Yes. Well, and the problem that we're seeing today is that when Alexis de Tocqueville came to America in the 1830s and wrote a book called Democracy in America, kind of a critique on our system. And he said one of the problems with America, in the South, predominantly in the South, he says we had 2 classes of people. We had the slave class, and then you had the working class, who only do leisure because they had people do their work for them. And he said the problem you're going to have if you create a leisure class of people who don't do anything, you're going to essentially destroy your society, because people need to be doing things. People need to be doing things.
Fair enough.
if your life is just all leisure, it's going to destroy your society. And that's what he predicted for us, that we would leisure ourselves to death. And I see that kind of not necessarily coming to fruition, but the idea that I have to give my son, who doesn't really have to work, a position in some company somewhere or go up to the middle, I have to give him some kind of structure because I don't want him to be a playboy all his life just spending daddy's money. So, you know what I mean? And I think that's the difference.
That's important. So what's the difference between, we're going to talk about good nepotism and bad nepotism. Like, what's the difference, right? When does it, we were hinting at that, but when do we really need to care about this? Not to say that we have to care, but I mean, what's the threshold for like, all right, this is ridiculous? Because at the end of the day, when you walk into a mom and pop shop and you like the food, you like the restaurant, and everybody in there is family, you don't say anything about it, right? We don't say anything about all the different owners of whatever, right? I think what ends up happening, if I may, I'm gonna take a stab in the dark here. When it comes to getting money, right? Most people have that as their number one thing in life. But when you think about life, you think about liberty, you think about time, that's not the only thing. But being special in life is just another attribute of life and being great, of being able to do things that other people can't do. Now, we're going to talk about basketball. We're talking about LeBron. So we're talking about basketball, which is a sport dominated by African-American, or you will say European, men, right? So we're talking about a highly skilled sport that not a lot of, we'll say, white people, for lack of a better word, play in the sport at the highest level, but control it. They control it. And so now we have, dare I say, an individual who has enough power to seem like he has control in a situation where it would take business acumen and a hell of a good family to have acquired this, to own a team and run it. But what type of talent does it take to get to that level and have the business acumen and wherewithal to be able to be a shot caller like that? That shit could make someone envious. And I'm here to tell you, I just sometimes think that white people get envious of black people for the shit they can't do. And that's not because I can't stand white people or whatever. I've been there before, right? It's like it's not like I'm saying I have white friends or all this. I'm just saying the normal person could have envy. A normal person could have envy for certain situations. But I feel like I've been in situations where there has been a legit envy for just a lack of being able to.
Yeah, but I would reframe that a little bit.
I know it has to be reframed in every single way, but the topic itself.
But the reason that I say that is because I don't think that you're equating the social capital of whiteness into your statement.
Well, the social capital of whiteness, I think exists.
But I say that from not white as people. I don't because I think
race is people though. That's what I'm saying.
Because I think it's a social construct. I think race is socially constructed. We were not. We didn't
here's
call.
What I'm saying. Yeah. Here's what I'm saying. This is not about making this a race thing. This is about a not being able to do something thing. Like, I don't have access to this world. There are people who are not black that I've had conversations with them that they would have a conversation with a black person and say, I wish I was black.
Yeah, but I think that there is an exclusionary aspect of this, considering the fact that it's never been socially advantageous to be around black people in a white dominated society. It's the other way around. Black people wanted to be in white spaces more than white people want to be in black spaces.
But that's what's so important about the conversation, because publicly you wouldn't do it unless you were against the grain, which is why this is a disclaimer to my boy BK, because he was against the grain like that.
Yeah.
Right. But for you to publicly admit to being an advocate would be something different than the norm, especially in times of trauma.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
I think it's fair.
All right.
I think it's fair. But we could almost take one step back and take a look at it and go, okay, so where is the real issue? Is the issue because my dad got me a job, or is it because there's a perception or an observation of perceived advantage? Do I think that that person's going to do better than the next, draftee on that team because of his dad? No, probably not. Is he going to have more time to practice every day? Probably, because dad's there. So there becomes a situation where possibly other draftees on that team go, this may not be, black, white, or indifferent. It doesn't matter about the race at this point.
Right.
Are I going to be afforded that same ability to practice, to work with LeBron, to is JJ going to call the same plays for me, or am I going to get pushed off to the summer league and wait until Bronny doesn't make it?
Well, so one of the dangerous things I think what happens with nepotism is that you could potentially put a target on somebody's back.
You sure can.
Oh, yeah.
And so again, with this being dedicated,
I think that's almost automatic in this situation.
Right. Unless I would say in this situation, yes. What you got, Ham?
No, I said everybody's gonna be coming for him.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But see, everybody knows. But see, if you hopefully they're smart enough to know that, right? But again, we're not talking about fairness here. I'm talking about like ability and access. We're not talking about access, because again, I'm saying going back to what you said, Ham, you had men commenting about what LeBron was doing, and it's like, hey, if you ain't even talk to your son, it's like you can't even get your son to work at Burger King.
He's like,
right? What are you talking about? So there's this. I've made the statement that he's the greatest. He's the GOAT, because this man was able to do what he did in basketball and create another human being and bring him into the league. And here's the thing: as a young black man, I had a dream of playing basketball. Right? Here's the thing: when you think about that shit's amazing.
Yeah, but I think of it as ultimately a difference is a glass ceiling is being broken. And anytime you break a glass ceiling, you're gonna probably cut your feet. We seen Die Hard, that scene where he has to walk through the glass.
Yep.
But I say
Christmas movie, man.
Probably if you go back to President Obama, he said after Trayvon Martin was killed, he said that could have been my son.
Oh yeah.
From a nepotistic perspective, I think it opens up a window that you can see things clearer now. And I think that we're getting to a point, especially with basketball, when LeBron, he's transcendental. I mean, he's transcended the sport. I mean, he's making more money off the court than on the court. You see what I'm saying? So basketball is like his part-time thing. And so he's a brand. And anytime you become a brand, anything that has your stamp on it is automatically a value. They can put their brand on you. And you can create situations and relationships where now LeBron can put somebody else's son on. He can know somebody else's son, and they pick a call and be like, hey, Bron, I need you to get my dude over in Sacramento. And LeBron like, okay, we good. Because now we're talking about the hookup. Because the hookup and nepotism are very closely related.
Oh, networking at its best.
Exactly. So, and when you say network, I look at network and I say the difference between nepotism and network is we ain't no blood involved.
Right.
But you can have stronger ties from networking than sometimes with your family.
You absolutely can.
because you've all seen it. We have things that we can't tell. You can't tell big ideas to people who can't conceptualize them.
Yeah,
You can't
small
speak
minds.
globally to people who speak locally.
Yeah, and so you need people who have a global perspective, who can look beyond frames. And that's why when we talk about race in America, and I'm glad you're on the phone, JJ, because I think when we talk race in America, we don't do it in a way that it's not, to me, it's not an emotional conversation. To me, it's not about emotion. It's about things happen here. You didn't do them, I didn't do them, but we left with to deal with it. And how we choose to deal with that, you can avoid it, you can do all those things, but we're here and we're left with it. And I think the people who came before us gave us horrible tools to fix them. The people who came before us did not give us the tools to have the conversations about certain things, specifically how pervasive the problem was in this country and how ingrained it was. It wasn't just policy, it was psychology. It was at that level. And now we're deconstructing that. And as we deconstruct that, there are certain people, when you're talking to them about it, they don't have the language to do it in a way that won't offend somebody.
Correct.
That's why I don't say white people anymore. I say either people of Eurocentric descent, because if I'm paralleling the title, I understand that prior to the year 1681, there was no people who called themselves white on the planet.
Absolutely.
If you go to Europe, ain't nobody in Germany calling themselves white. They're German.
No, exactly.
And that's a U.S. thing.
It is.
Well, so let's pause. Let's stop there real quick. So bringing that up, it was, if I'm not mistaken, those categories came up to play certain statistics a certain type of way.
They absolutely did.
To determine how resources will go, to determine how resources are going to be allocated by public policy.
Okay, so now hear me out. When I say white people, that is anybody who falls into the consciousness of that power, instead of identifying ethnically and understanding the differences and saying, oh no, whatever. And that falls back to the resources of being shielded by the privilege, honestly.
Yeah, I just find that the term can be triggering to people who don't necessarily ascribe to an ideology that you lump them into. Like you're a group,
sure. But
I think that if you're speaking about individuals and from a group perspective, you don't individualize people to the level of understanding their story. Because I don't know.
But damn it, that's what this show is for.
Yeah,
it's
right.
Objectively aggressive. It's objectively aggressive. The Lighthouse series. We're gonna say it and then we're gonna explain it. And we're here. You're here to check it, just like I'm here to check it, because the whiteness is it's a power dynamic that could to the simplest mind be deemed as a color, right? Because you can make it. You can Jay-Z white.
So okay, so if this is a thing. If you go historically and you ask the question
with money, of course.
Well, but if you ask the question, that I think we don't deal with is being Black in America. What does it mean from a perspective of resources? Because if somebody told to you, if you look at wealth in America, and if you look at how most wealth is held in home value and in resale value of homes, that's usually where most wealth is at in any
majority of it.
Yeah. And so if you look at redlining, if you look at the history of our country, you see that wealth was distributed unequally by public policy. It wasn't just some dude in an office saying, I'm going to be discriminative. It was widespread and systemic. Reason we don't talk about that, because if public policy created the problem, we sometimes think individual actions will fix it. And I'm like, no, if I use the bulldozer to tear the building down, then ultimately what's going to happen is going to look different if I took the brick by brick. And the issue is you have to be delicate. It's like dissecting something. But if you pull out the wrong brick, you're not going to be able to sometimes connect to people who will, I would say, are not open to the idea that you're not complicit in a conspiracy. Like this is our lived experiences, our phenomenology, how we see the world and what shapes it. And the reason we understand that when I'm in combat, all I know is you're shooting in the same way the enemy's shooting. Like if you're shooting at the enemy when I need to shoot at the enemy. I don't care what color you look like, you're shooting at the people who try to kill me.
We're all going the same way.
Go the same way. And that's all that matters.
Yep.
And I think what we've created in our society is this idea that we have to prepare ourselves and have aggressive conversations objectively so that we can not just get to a point of understanding. We overstand, to your point, Calvin. We overstand that we have a great story here. Now, I think people don't realize that. Like, if you tell our story, it's like a really good story, like in its totality, not just 1619 and 1776, like the whole story in one story. You don't have to like cut out pieces and only.
It doesn't have to be broke down.
It doesn't
by any means. Yeah,
it's a good story, and I think the idea is that it's a story that it's at times, like if you watch a movie, you have the up parts of the movie, you got the down parts of the movie, and I think as our story is being told, we cannot tell the complete story unless we can tell each other's story, our testimony. We tell each other, hey, this is how I see the world. This is how you see the world. But now we need to say, can we reason together? Can we create a shared vision of it? And I think sometimes it ain't as far off as people I like to make it seem, I think, when it comes to the punditry.
Well, unfortunately, what comes with those stories, we only want to tell the bad segments, right?
Yeah.
We don't want to share the successes. We don't want to share the jubilation. We want to share all the the trauma, the bad parts, the constant struggle, instead of telling the whole story. So we have a broad and a very overarching understanding of said story. Yeah,
and
so
then
that's a difficult part.
And then the framing of that story, because I think how you frame the story, and it's like Spike Lee was like one of the probably first prominent black directors of movies that early 90s. And when you see how he directs movies, it's like he uses the camera a little differently. He has a perspective of directing of how he sees the world. And I think that we're trying to see the world from how other people see it, but we cannot do it if we are operating from an emotional reasoning. Like, I can't see it how you see it because I can't connect to how you feel it emotionally. I can't say, you know what, this is going to be a sad story for you. I say, you know what, that might be a story for empowerment for you. But I think there's this paternalistic idea in our systems that people have to approve messages first. Like you have to stamp off on this. So-and-so got to, general got to sign off on it. And then it gets, I don't know, like bottled up where I don't know if it's like national issues, but I think you're starting to see a lot of issues in our country come to head because we have not had tough conversations. We haven't had them. And now you're starting to see, we don't talk about religion. We don't talk about politics. We don't talk about sex. We don't talk about the subjects of the day. So now we are left to assume, and I would say the explanation what I would say is that the part of nepotism, and I saw this just recently with the Supreme Court's decision about removing affirmative action, but they don't want to deal with legacy admission. And legacy admission is nepotism. It's I can get to go to this prestigious Ivy League school because my dad went. I get it, but they didn't want to touch that issue. But they want to touch affirmative action. And I find that that's very backwards to me. And so we don't talk about that form of nepotism because we know that if you want to be on the Supreme Court, you either go to Harvard or Yale. That's 8 of the 9 justices went to those schools. So if I don't go to Harvard or Yale, I'm pretty much don't even put in my application. And I think that we've structured benefits in this country at levels that there's certain things like that I've learned, especially in the last, I would say, few years. There's certain things that you're only going to learn from people who were never designed to teach it to you. If you get that, well, that they were never supposed to teach it to you, and once you get it, it's yours. And that's what I like about education. Once someone gives you education,
Can't take it away. Yeah,
okay.
Can't take it away.
Well, and that was the beautiful thing about being in the service for me, because I feel like I learned some things that I feel like I don't know if they wanted me to learn that like that.
Yeah. But once you were indoctrinated, then you could critically think. And then you could say, wait a minute. Oh, you know what? Oh, I see what the reason they wanted me to fold my shirt in the 6-inch corners is they wanted to see if I could follow instructions.
Correct. And so being able, but so, you know, people have conversations about joining the military, and, you know, I would think someone would join the military because of their lack of access to nepotism in certain situations, right? So the military automatically creates a subconscious of saying you had to go somewhere and lose yourself and be built up as somebody else to succeed. And people who get to experience nepotism get to experience not only the uniqueness of being themselves, but being themselves to the event that they don't even have to struggle that hard because their parents gave it to them. That could be that those are things we sit here now. When I see nepotism, I can get pissed off because I straight up don't think people deserve to be in certain positions because they can't even respond the way that they need to in that position, right? When you need certain attributes and characteristics from certain people in certain positions, meaning they have duties and responsibilities, expectations. Luckily, like you said with the actors, they became better actors and actresses. But is that always the case with nepotism? I don't know, because you could see I recognize by what I say predicted behavior psychology that most things that come easy don't get appreciated.
That's fair.
And so, you know, as we roll into the final thought, because we're rolling up into the hour. I mean, we can continue to go. You know, I like this conversation for a lot of different reasons, because it gets us to have a true conversation about like what we're seeing and what we're doing in life. Like when we see nepotism, like, well, what the hell is that? Right? Because what it was a black exceptionalism event, which we'll call a punctuated event, right? But the likelihood that we'll see something like that again, I don't know. But we do see NBA players and former NBA players' children in the league. So what we're seeing here is just happens to be a phenomenon based on who LeBron is, but it's not the first time that we've seen children of former NBA players in the league. So it just
and it definitely will not be the last time we ever see it either.
Well, I mean, for them to play together, I don't know.
Right.
That'd
be a tough one. That'd be a tough one.
If Bronny knock up the first chick, you know, but it's just a little jokey joke. But at the end of the day, being able to develop an athlete to get to the NBA level is just phenomenal in my opinion. But being able to, and that's why I called him the GOAT. I called him the GOAT because not only was he questionably one of the best players in the world, and you know, there's comparisons to Michael Jordan and what's not, but he got his son in, and Michael tried to do that and all that, and that didn't happen. So when we say GOAT, it was just a play on the word, like, yo, you can actually be the greatest basketball player by potentially being questionably the greatest basketball player. Now, with you being a business the way that you are, no basketball player has ever done what he's doing, and now he's gotten his son into the league. That was just a salute to being a man, getting it done. You know what I mean? Because like, what the hell? For just taking off everything and say, hey man, do you respect what he did as a man and what he had to do? Because he came from, you know, the whole single parent household, and you can tell that he come from that by the way that he flop and cry and shit. But He did it.
You can't fault him for wanting better for his kids. You absolutely can't. You can't fault him for making the moves that he could make to bring his son along. You can't fault him for that. Overall, I truly believe it was just really shocking to anyone. Predominantly, players in the league, and even more so, college players, that a dad would push. I mean, and let's call spade a spade. Dad would push to get his son on a team. The opposite of that, though, good on him. Not many parents would step that hard and push that hard for their kid. They just wouldn't.
Hell, I would have to say, I don't quote me on this, but in the NCAA itself, when it comes to athletes, you would hope that most of them came from two-parent households, but in the Black community, we know that there are a lot of two-parent households, but I know people who've gone to the league from two-parent households and who didn't have a dad, right? So we see a disadvantage with people leaning on athletics as the ability to make it out of their situation, which is why nepotism and networking is such a touchy subject to people with no resources. Go ahead, sir.
But if you told somebody, like, if you see a black kid that's 6 feet 6 tall, and your first assumption is he must be a good basketball player,
you automatically gonna say it.
It's like maybe he wants to be a pianist. Maybe he wants to be classically, but the assumption that because I'm big and I'm black, I got to be a basketball player is a baked in kind of subconscious racism to me.
It's stereotype.
It's stereotype. Yeah.
But it's a form of prejudice that comes with abductive reasoning. And the abductive reasoning is just that this is the most logical. If I have to using all the facts I have right now, statistically, I'm going to say you're probably good at basketball. And that dialogue can be internal or external. But what I find now is that when you're talking to people who want to do things that don't get it, it's like there is no word. I don't like the word deserve. I don't think anyone deserves anything, personally. I don't think anyone deserves anything. No one deserves anything. Nothing is deserved outside of what you earned. If you didn't earn it, you don't deserve it. So if you get it without earning it, that's called grace. Ooh. Your grace. That's why the king was called your grace, because he could bestow things to people who were not his family. You want to be a duke? Here, you can be it. And being a kingmaker, being able to distill or to distribute resources to people that you can control, I think is a very powerful move. And I think it's something that has jarred people because it's not something they're used to seeing. It's not the normalcy bias. See, the normalcy bias says you don't do this. Now you're seeing a bias being challenged. And
it's shaking people up, Bert.
Yes.
It's shaking people up.
I'm gonna call bull crap shit since it's Friday.
Hey, let's go.
Let's go. And I'm not saying you're wrong. What I'm calling is major bullshit in the whole scheme of the thing, because there are people in America who kiss the crown's ass, right? We kiss the crown. No, I didn't say we. I say we as Americans, because you can see it and be like, damn, we care a lot about the queen. And we just had the 4th of July celebration, and when we say we, the country, right? But kingdom itself is about nepotism.
Oh yeah,
it's being handed down.
Its foundation is right there.
And so the country, the same like double consciousness country that has damn borderline personality disorder, or we call it bipolar, whatever. I'm not here to diagnose. I can say that if you love the fact that we separated from England and all the crown, but still worship them unconsciously, hear me out now, right? This is the same world that you can be mad at somebody for using nepotism as it goes on right in your backyard, right?
And one of the things,
and you benefit from it because, and so Doc, real quick, Ham, nepotism can spin off into networking.
Yeah.
And that's when that whole that whole classism thing can turn.
All I was going to say is that in the original Constitution, it says that you cannot bestow any titles of nobility here. So there is a rule in our Constitution that there can't be no dukes and duchesses and queens and viscounts and earls and barons. We don't allow that. We don't until this last Supreme Court ruling, which we won't get into, but that's not the point. We don't allow that because we know what it fosters. It fosters a system where the people at the bottom of the pyramid will eat the people at the top, because nepotism unrestrained leads to revolution and eating people. Because what will happen is the people at the top will continue to produce, and in capitalism, the goal is to extract as much capital as possible. And nepotism is the fastest way to do it, because I trust these people. And so that
it goes back into the house.
So there are other laws that we have put in place for public policy, to JJ's point, to alleviate that issue, because even the mere perception of nepotism can be problematic, whether you have it or not. Just that perceived that somebody's getting advantage. Like, we all know that Joe Biden's son got that job at Burisma because his dad was the president. We know he didn't know nothing about working at no whatever energy company in Europe. We know he only got that job. We know that Jared Kushner only got that $1 billion from Saudi because Trump was the president. Like, we're not stupid. But when we see it on that level, but we'll talk about LeBron, we won't talk about Biden and Trump, we won't talk about them. But that, to me, is just as dangerous, because that's public policy. That affects people's lives. That capital is not being distributed. So I think that it's important to note it, that although we need nepotism, too much of it will lead to a society where people cannot own anything for themselves. They won't be able. That's why, like, was it BlackRock by 2030 wants to own 40% of all residential homes in America, which is crazy. And so
they're doing it.
Yeah,
it's a rough reality too.
And it's happening.
I might be in that. This house might be. I don't own this house. I own another one. This house might be one because a corporation. I've been trying to.
They're buying them up, and they're paying top dollar because they've been flooded with capital. And because, remember, capital controls is one thing. Access to this capital, for example, I would say the biggest nepotistic thing this country ever did in its history is in the Federal Reserve Act of 1913. The Federal Reserve Act says who can print and money and credit in this country. Where's no black, and listen, any board or organization that in 2024 that has not had a black member on there, I'm suspicious of. If it's 2024 and you have not had one black person in the entirety of your organization, and you've been around for over 100 years, I just question it, because you don't have any ideology diversity. And I'm not talking about color.
Right.
I'm talking about diversity of interest at the table. Because what nepotism does is I can sit at the front of the table. My son sits this side. My little son sits that. My wife sits here. My cousin sits here. My nephew sits here. And we're only thinking about our family's interest. We're not thinking about nobody else. And I think what was happening in the public policy sphere, when you have that, what you see happen is now we have to insulate ourselves from the concerns. So now I need politicians who ain't related to nobody, who will go out there and get the heat, and their children get the heat for things that I don't want to be dealt with. But they're losing the ability to do that. And the reason it is because I think people are starting, I hate to use the word woke.
Oh, wow.
People are waking up to the idea that they're puppets, that political parties are puppets. And they're being, what's those called? The marginate puppets. And they're just being puppeted. They're being puppeteered. And now we want to see who holding the strings.
Yes.
That's nepotism, the string holders.
Right. And the scariest part about that, what you just said, in context, real time, about those politicians being on the ends of strings is, with us being in the armed forces and understanding generals and the power that generals have, right? And that you have to be confirmed by Congress to even be a general. But to know that generals lick the boots of politicians, and to know that the politicians are puppets. So what are generals? What are the people under them? That's the scariest thing to think about it, because
It's a scary reality.
the military is nothing but the business end of the political stick.
Yeah, but I think Shakespeare said it best, man. You know, the English major in me comes out sometimes, because I believe in literature we find a truth that we won't find in our reality. But Shakespeare said the world is a stage and everybody plays a part. And I realized that the stage that we're on is the stage that we are on is understanding what character in the play am I and what act are we in this play. We're in Act 2, Scene 3, Paragraph 4 of the Lighthouse series. You know what I mean? And
there we go.
And so what you start to see happen is that we find ourselves in the literature. I think that we're in I told you about the Arthur Miller Death of a Salesman. If you read that play today and you ask yourself, who is Arthur Miller today? What's dying today that was dying then? And then juxtapose it with today and then see the psychology of then, it'll fascinate you. It's fascinating because look at his son. What happened to his son? He didn't have anything to give to his son. Are you familiar with the play Death of a Salesman? His job is dying.
Yeah.
He cannot pass on his job.
Has no option to do it. Yep.
Yes, he withers away. His son is despondent because the dad loses authority when he can no longer give anything to the child. So now the child is wandering out in the world trying to find his place. He gets in trouble because he doesn't have a foundation. And I think that's what's happening to us today. We're seeing the death of a lot of things. Even with social media, we're seeing the death of communicating with people.
Absolutely are.
And people are losing that skill. And so now when we look at Arthur Miller's play today, we can say it's postmodern now. We can say it's postmodern because he's already gave a template for what happens when I don't have a nepotistic system in place.
And
my children become despondent.
Yep. Because
if I was a shoemaker, a cobbler, my children were going to be cobblers. That's the caste. Because the caste system is that you do not move above your station. And I think with America, for whatever we want to say about it, the exceptionalist part of it is that the caste that you're born in, you don't have to remain there.
Yeah, you're not destined to reside there for the rest of your life.
Yes, and the idea that you can get out of it alone, whether you get out or not, is not the point. The idea that it is possible gives people hope, which I think creates that balance of, that nepotistic feel.
That meritocracy thing, right? That meritocracy, it feels like, it feels like you can come from one place and make it to another. However, without proper networking, without nepotism, without resources, you will constantly run into barriers and barriers and barriers. And the only reason I know that, not but for the fact that, people can tell me this, I run into it myself daily. And I ask myself, how in the hell do people pull this stuff off? But I know that there's somebody with resources and time and the wherewithal to be able to get this stuff done, because as you elevate your conscious and you want to get better, you'll find it harder. Let me give you an example. You want to eat better fruits and vegetables? Got to go to certain places and spend a little bit more money unless you're growing it, right? So everything that you want, you can say, look, luxury items cost a lot, but now the luxury is having items that don't kill you and that don't own you. But being able to do that is hard enough because we live in a capitalistic society that, from a social and cultural standpoint, it tells you how to live. You can't even get through I put ads on my YouTube. I'm getting paid for it, so there's always something telling you what to do. And just like nepotism, hey, your folks are telling you what to do. So the despondent comes in the fact that, hell, You might have been handed down something you didn't even want, which is the important thing about legacy. Because legacy, I am finding, is one of the most egotistical things because people believe in their legacy. They don't know it.
It's like Notre Dame fans. Like
They
Newt
feel they have
Rockne,
to follow it though.
it's like Newt Rockne ain't coming back. Lou Holtz ain't coming back, right? But they have this golden age fallacy of like in the better times. And I tell people it's a weird idea to think that you're not biased to the time that you were raised in, because you don't have any contrast. And I'm learning this because when I talk to people, I said, I can't reconstruct the framework if I'm attached to the one I'm currently in. Deconstructing. And I noticed this is a very interesting thing to deconstruct when you see that what education has become to nepotism is just as important anywhere else. Because there are things as a doctor, I can tell my daughter that she don't have to worry about, that she's going to have an advantage because I got $150,000 education and I got some books and I remember some of the stuff. And I'm going to be able to tell her, and I'm going to be able to tell her some things that's going to make it easier for her that they don't tell people. They just don't tell people. And it's like, and I'm learning why they don't tell people, because I didn't realize until recently how destabling information can be to a mind that's not ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that because sometimes we just piled on data. I don't have time to just.
Yeah. Right.
Because we spend so much time in the indoctrination, we never get to the critical part. And that's why being out of the military for these last 3 years and being able to look at it from outside of it critically, I'm like, ooh.
All right. So
It's a hell of a vision, isn't it?
Hey, so speaking of that, JJ, as we wrap up, what do you feel like is your biggest takeaway since you retired, you know, in your perspective and how the world is working? What would you give?
Well, Cal, the probably the biggest takeaway I have on this is, you know, coming out, and it goes back to my original statement of going into the military and, you know, 18, 19, 20-year-olds, and we're all thrown across that level playing field, right? They break us down to build us back up, and we all got to try and be the same. When you come out, those of the same age group are not the same.
Yeah.
That was one thing that, you know, when I came out, you know, at 37, 38 years old, I believed I was prepared. I believed I was set. I believed I was ready to go into the civilian workforce, right? Completely ill-prepared, completely unprepared. I still had that militaristic view. I had an unrealistic assumption that everyone that I was working with was a level playing field, and that everybody was looking for the same common goal, and we were all going to work together to succeed. And it was a complete fallacy. It really was. Real quick, I realized within probably 8 months to a year that you had to find your way, and you had to find your way quick. Yeah. And you had to see how you could leverage those potential networking options that you had, and leverage those in a way to benefit not only yourself but your family, right? So then we go back to the nepotism aspect of this, and it's okay. So I want to do better for my son. I got a 24-year-old son, right? I want to make sure that I set him up and groom him, if you will, to make sure he gets to that next level. You know, and to what, you know, Ham brought to the table about, you know, you have that legacy for your kids or for your family, and you want to see how they can succeed as well. You can give them a certain amount of direction, but ultimately they got to take it on themselves, because I don't have a huge, you know, financial thing that I'm going to bestow upon my son when I pass or anything like that. And so it's what we can do and how we can do it and provide and move on.
Okay. All right. Ham, you're as we wrapping up these final thoughts. I mean, we're talking nepotism. We're talking what you're seeing different from now, from then. What's your thought?
I wish they would have told me what emotional intelligence was.
Ooh.
I just
Went
never.
there. We gonna do another hour, Cal?
No, I mean, this is something that. No, this is just something that
Damn.
I've learned about since I gotten out that nobody really concerned themselves with. When I was in the military, I never heard those two words used in back to back.
No,
I've never heard those words used. But now that I know what that means, I think it's easier for me to interact with people because I know where I'm at already emotionally first.
Right.
Like I know where I'm at. And since I know where I'm at, if I'm not in a good mood, then I probably should withdraw from people right now. You know, I'm learning that managing of my emotion so that then when I get into a social environment, I'm not overwhelmed emotionally. So that's something that in the military, I never had the luxury of doing. I always had to just press through. I've always had to just do and execute. But now as I'm taking the time to assess, how do I feel about this? You know, I had this really weird problem of answering the phone no matter who called. I don't care what it was. It was just a reflex thing. If I seen the phone ringing, I'm just seeing it's like, what's going on? Now I look at the phone and I'm like, you know what? I don't really want to talk. And I don't have to talk. This is for my convenience. This isn't so you can get a hold of me. This isn't a electronic leash, you know.
I'm a victim of that, by the way.
And so I had to go and change my car time from military time to civilian time. Because I had to be like, it's just little things I did to say, you know what, I didn't cut my hair no more. I'm not, you know, I just realized that I want to look how I want to look. And I don't even know what I look like. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's self-discovery. I think I would say that. It's just been a self-discovery. Yeah, that's what I've been doing.
Well, I will say this. I will say this. You know, I recognize my dog done opened the door, but he can't bring in the damn newspaper. I'm just kidding. So, you know, I recognize nepotism in a different way now. But since I left this military, I've recognized that I've tried to build a certain amount of credibility. He's like, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And so sometimes it's just a combination of both. It's a combination of both. And so, you know, I remember growing up playing on football teams and where, you know, in the South, that was a big deal. Like football was a big deal, even at the Pop Austin level. And I played on teams where we were crushing people, you know. But my uncle and my dad were the coaches or friends of his or whatever. So I came up in this system, you know, playing quarterback and stuff like that. Was that because my dad and my uncle or what's not was maybe. But you know, I remember getting put through the rings like a little harder than most other people too, right? Like I remember being forced to do things that most other people weren't and expected to be great. But at the same time, I went through life with an active enough father in a world where people might have laissez-faire fathers or no fathers at all. And so that was a leg up for me. And, you know, me being not what we're calling white today. I'm not white. So, but my mom, she was white adjacent enough because, you know, a black woman back in the day, or even now, had to find a way to take care of kids, and she can get into that corporate world easier. You know, she's more docile than the black man, excuse me. And so this is where I started seeing code switching and stuff, right? So I was blessed enough to have an active father and a diverse mother to the point where I can go to the military and be a high functioning person and be diverse. Leg up. Because you can meet people who are there who have no motivation and no diversity, right? But
we all saw plenty of it.
Oh, exactly, right. but you can watch people become groomed. Here's that word again. Groomed with a cultural competence enough to be able to go to other countries and survive. Right. So what I've recognized as we wrap this up, gentlemen, about all this is that shit, man, everybody's trainable. Everybody's trainable if forced to. And a lot of people don't have a life or have never been put in situations where they were literally forced to work or to deal with situations. And sometimes nepotism forces you to do that. A lot of times it forces you to do that in a way where people are taking on responsibilities at earlier ages than most of their peers, and therefore giving them a leg up. So that's why I wanted to have the conversation about what's good nepotism, what's bad, what's nepotism, period, because objectively it's going to exist because we have legacy, we have things to do, and we want to take care of our children. And at what level and when should it be? For if it's for entertainment purposes, if it's for public policy, we need to look at it. But at the end of the day, you know, we are all responsible for where we are in this world. And I would say there's 4 types of luck. There's blind luck. And blind luck is like you can fall lucky to being into a wealthy family. There's luck with motion, meaning you make shit move, right? There's luck with, what did it say? You awareness. So you become aware that you can create your own luck. And then you can create your luck so much that you create a luck with uniqueness. And
the intersection of opportunity and preparation.
Proper planning prevents piss poor performance.
It sure does.
So luck is where opportunity meets preparation. And I think at the end of the day,
it comes back. It comes back.
Right. Yeah. And so I think as parents, our best work is to be done in our children. And as parents, that is our number one job on this planet. Once we have a kid, is to be a parent, and it doesn't stop. Right? You got a you got a grown kid, JJ, right? Like you're still working that, right?
Yeah, sure am. Sure
and remember when you were that age? What were you doing at your son's age?
I was actually on my 3rd deployment at my son's age, so yeah. Part of me looks at it and goes, you know, I should have done more as a parent, but the other part of me says, let him find his way. So he'll be all right.
That's the balance, right? Yep. Because you can only do what you can do. But if you can get to the point where you can still drill down on your kid, make him great, still have access to him, but he still has access to the world, Bronny, man, you did a damn good job as a parent, especially based on your resources, because again, you would have to look at where LeBron came from to where he's at, to Dr. Ham's point about being able to be born in one cast and end up in another. And so, hey man, I think this was a beautiful, beautiful discussion. JJ, you're welcome back anytime, man. You know,
I appreciate it, Cal. Thank you very much. It was great to be on.
Hey, no problem, man. Like I said, I want more of this. And Dr. Ham, I appreciate, as always, you know, the guidance and the mentorship from that standpoint of understanding history and public policy and administrations. You know, that expertise is definitely needed in every conversation, because it affects the stuff we're talking about. It's policy level. And
absolutely is. Yeah.
I don't even know. So yeah, gentlemen, we can go ahead and cut this short. I'll say this. Make sure you can always shop at OA by KJ. You can get your latest gear, showing your reverence. Like I said, I want to dedicate this podcast to my good friend Bradley. I know him since I was 14. He had a unique life. But it was one of those lives where when I talk race, it's very sensitive to me, because I'm really not talking about race. I'm talking about how we can be divided by it. because Brad was one of those people who had similar experiences to, you know, non-white experiences, even with like the police. And I'm not saying that, but for the fact that there are people who, you know, live in this world just with a little bit extra fear and catharsis with stepping outside the door. And that's not limited to race. And so, JJ, I appreciate you coming on. Dr. Ham,
Absolutely.
I appreciate you again, sir. So I'm gonna end this since it's unique. We're gonna end this on people always asking y'all
All these questions.
We'll catch you next time here at the Lighthouse series, and thank you for tuning in.
People always asking me all these damn questions, and they so confused. I don't know what to tell them. Why he do this? Why he do that? How you do this? How you do that? Hell yeah, I'm trying to do what I want, and I get good grades. That's why I wear these hats with A's. These people recognize that's why they stay up in my face. Cause
People always ask me all these damn questions. People always ask all these damn questions.
they wanna know my play by